Hey, we're back to the podcast. This is the Managing Your Financial Future podcast with Lucia Capital Group. I'm Ray Lucia Jr., CEO.
And I'm Joe Lucia, president of Lucia Capital Group.
And today we're going to talk about tax planning and blending strategies with your portfolio.
Well, Junior, there's a lot of advice out there, and they say, hey, when you're 59 and a half, you have access without penalty to take withdrawals from your qualified accounts. But when should you? Or should you wait? Now we learned about the Secure Act.
Yeah, we talked about that a couple episodes ago.
Wait all the way till you're 72.
And the question is, should you? Shouldn't you? What do you do? How do you think about that, Joe?
Well, I look at it, everybody's situation obviously is unique and different. A lot of it depends on income. A lot of it depends on the sources of income. So what I mean by that is what's taxable, what's been tax deferred, and what's tax-free. So people have built up money in Roth accounts that potentially you could pull out tax-free. They may have a pension that may be taxable or may not be taxable. Social Security, we all know that not all of your Social Security is taxable, but
don't forget about their 401ks and traditional IRAs.
So there's lots of different sources of income, and depending, yes, it may not behoove you to wait till you're 72 to take a distribution out of your IRA.
Where financial advisors earn their keep is in the tax planning of your retirement distributions.
And we call it here at Lucia blending your buckets. For example, let's say half your money was in personal accounts and half your money was in tax-deferred qualified accounts. You would think the simple math is, take 50% of your income out of the taxable and 50% of your income out of the tax-deferred. And in some cases, that may work fantastic. But in other cases, depending on what your other income sources look like, maybe you want to take more out of the qualified account to butt up against the next tax bracket. Maybe you want to take less so you don't bump yourself into the next tax bracket. Maybe there's strategies to do a Roth conversion.
Delay your Social Security.
You could delay Social Security, take from the portfolio.
What if you know you're going to sell a property in a couple years and your tax bracket's going to go through the roof? Who knows? There's lots of different things that could happen in your life. And if you can plan them out properly, and sometimes you can't plan them out, but if you can, at least think about them and talk with your financial advisor about them, you might be able to save a lot of money. That's the point. So we're going to kick it over, Joe, to the guys, and they're going to talk about blending the buckets and working your tax brackets and making sure that you have a tax-sensitive retirement withdrawal strategy.
So with that, let's turn it over to Johnny Dean and Rick the Professor Plum.
It's been almost 2 decades we've been on this journey to educate, liberate, and help you take action so you may better manage your financial future, achieve peace of mind, and accomplish your life's purpose. This podcast reveals financial tips, strategies, and insights that will help you set your goals and guide you along the way to help you achieve them. This is Managing Your Financial Future, brought to you by the advisors at Lucia Capital Group. I'm your host, Johnny Dean, with our own Rick the Professor Plum, Chief Financial Planning Officer. Podcast time, Managing Your Financial Future. Johnny Dean, Professor Rick Plum from Lucia Capital Group. Happy you're all back with us once again. I want to remind you folks, if you just stumbled on the podcast, that you can certainly subscribe because we like that. It makes us feel wanted. I mean, you get feedback, but a lot of times people find that they didn't understand something, or they want you to explain something further. And by the time we get around to seeing that, the podcast is like 4 weeks ago. I have to remember to do that. And if you folks do want to have anything, we try to talk about what's on people's minds, and we try to calm fears wherever possible and clear up confusion wherever possible. So if there's anything that you'd like us to talk about, please go ahead and email us. You can email Professor Plum at your, I don't know, do we give out your
sure, rplum at luciacap.com, LUCIACAP.
RPLUM at luciacap.com. All right, so this one here, this week, I want to get into IRA withdrawals, but I want to ease into this for just a moment here. I want to take an individual. Most people just don't think about their money, especially as they've been accruing it over the years. You've been working since you're 20-something, 25, let's say. You've been saving for 40 years. You've been working with somebody, a financial...
Or doing it on your own.
But, over the years, you tend to accumulate things, all right? You tend to, in your financial life, accumulate
You've got your IRAs, you've got your rollover IRAs from 401ks.
You may have that.
You've got your Roth IRAs. If you read about that one day, so you started doing Roth IRAs. You had some extra money, or maybe you inherited some money from Uncle Bob, and you got some stocks there, or some brokerage account.
Personal
so you got
money.
Personal money here and there.
You got money in your checking. You got a 401k. Maybe you had 2 jobs over the course of those years, or 3.
Or both spouses. You got multiple 401k, 403b, 457 alphabet soup things, or number soups.
You've got a bunch of stuff. So here's what happens. You hit age 65, let's say. You decide to retire at age 65. You got your Medicare, so fortunately that's covered. But you say, oh, man, okay, I just retired. I'm not taking my Social Security because I couldn't before I retired. I was making too much money. So I have no Social Security, but I could take it now. I've got an IRA. I have a traditional IRA. I got a couple of Roth IRAs. My wife and I. We both have 401ks. Maybe we have both of them.
So I've got taxable accounts, tax deferred accounts, and potentially tax free accounts.
Right, and then I still have my Social Security, and I am completely. I never thought about it till now, but I have no idea what I should do. So what do people do? Well, what they might do is go online, and they'll say, okay, and I did this. I typed this in. I said, when should I take money from my IRA? All right, let's say I'm 65. Do I take it now? And you know what? There was only one website that talked about when you should take, and by the way, they got it wrong, when you should take money from your IRA. All of it said, here are the rules.
Rules, right.
And so what they'll tell you is, well, you shouldn't take it before age 59 and a half.
Well, that, I can sometimes agree with that. Most of the time I agree with that.
Yeah, because there are 10% penalties associated with it, although there are exceptions, but forget those. So they say, take it after 59 and a half because there's a penalty for that. And then they say, if you don't start taking money out of your tax-deferred accounts by the time you hit, well, let's say 72 now.
Yeah, new RMD rules.
70 and a half, but let's say 72 for almost everybody. If you don't start taking it out, you have to you're required to take it out. But it doesn't say anything like, well, here's what you need to think about when you take money out of your IRA.
When I've searched for these types of articles, I found them that they say, don't touch your IRA until you're mandated by the IRS or you run out of other money.
Well, and that's the one website I found that said, don't do it.
It says take your personal taxable funds first to keep yourself in a low bracket right now, and definitely don't touch the Roth IRA. Leave that for the kids or the heirs.
Now, in many cases...
wait a minute. Maybe I don't want to do it that way. Maybe I want to be more efficient for me.
In many cases, you would suggest the opposite. All right, so first, let's say, what do you say to somebody, and I know I'm not being specific, so you can't really give exact advice, but somebody who says, I've got this whole alphabet soup, as you call it, of different accounts. I'm completely confused. Is there anything you can give me in the way of general advice as to where I should take my money because I got to live off of something?
Well, let's start with the Roth IRA, which is the wild card. Is it big enough to make a difference in your life? I mean, a lot of people, the Roth IRAs came on a little later. They couldn't, they didn't get the deduction for doing it, so their Roths aren't that big. And so even if they use the Roth, it's, going to help them for like a year or two. Not enough to, so in that case, let's put that one off for the future. Now, on the other side, some people have made a conscious effort to do conversions, to fill their Roths, and they've got a decent portion of their portfolio in Roths. So now the question is, who do you want the Roth to benefit more, you or your heirs? Because that dictates how we treat that Roth. So we're going to, in this example, just say, we'll leave that one for the heirs. We want to leave it for the heirs. So now the question comes down to your taxable account or your tax-deferred account.
So in other words, do I take money out of my 401k and my traditional IRA?
Or do I take it out of my personal brokerage account, my CDs, and cash accounts? Well, it has a lot to do with, do you have pensions? Do you have other monies? What is your required minimum distribution going to look like? Do you have room in the current tax situation to take money out of your IRAs in a very efficient manner, like in the low tax brackets? You haven't taken your Social Security yet, you said.
Yeah.
That's another question we have to take into consideration first. When should you take your Social Security?
Right, and I've heard you should always wait till 70 because you get the highest check, and maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't.
Makes a lot of sense if you live to be 90. Didn't make much sense at all if you unfortunately passed away at 71. Getting those questions out of the way first, then we look at it and say, okay, you're not going to take your Social Security. You decided that. Let's use this lower tax bracket now. Let's use up the 12% bracket, depending upon the size of the IRA. I was actually speaking to somebody earlier today. We're going to use up the 22% bracket. They're actually a little worried that the 22% bracket will go back to 25% in the next, 5-6 years from now. And so they want to use up the 22% bracket because they know their RMDs, if they just leave it the way they are, is going to put them way up in the 22 or 25% bracket anyway. So they said, I'm going to pay it now and hope to help myself out in the future.
So let's say I retire January 1st, 2020, just to pick a date. So I don't have any earned income. I'm starting at zero.
Single or married?
Well, I'm married.
Okay.
So
the
you're
first
saying
roughly $100,000, $104,000, give or take, is going to be in the 0 or 12% income tax bracket.
say that again.
So roughly $104,000, $105,000 of gross income, not including any Social Security, because we're not taking Social Security right now. I'm just saying that you could have roughly $104,000, $105,000 of IRA distributions and stay in the 0 and 12% income tax bracket. Married couple filing joint return.
And so I would be paying.
You'd be paying about $10,000.
Maybe on $104,000, that's 10% or a little bit less,
right,
of a tax. Well, I think people don't.
So the question
think about
is,
that.
How much do you need? Well, I don't need that much. I only need $60,000, $70,000. Okay, let's take the $60,000, $70,000 out to live and convert the other $30,000, $40,000 and use up the 12% bracket. Because if we don't, then that money's going to stay in the IRA. And then when we do take our Social Security, not only will we be paying tax on the distribution from the IRA, but we're going to be paying tax on a chunk or up to 85% of our Social Security as well. But if I can take it out and reduce the IRA over the next 8 years, 9 years between now 62 and 70, maybe I can get my required minimum distribution down to a point where the Social Security and the IRMD don't create any taxes.
So you're saying, Professor Plum, as I ask you a leading question, are you saying that I can take money out of my traditional IRA or my 401k, depending on what I have, and not pay any taxes on all or a large portion of it?
In some cases, yes. I mean, you can stay in the lower brackets depending upon how you do it.
Well, in your example,
it depends on how much you need to spend, what you need to live, how much you have where, and what's going on in your life. But yeah, like I just said, the first $105,000. Now somebody's going to say the bracket ends at $80,000, Rick. Yeah, it does. But you've got a standard deduction for a married couple of almost $25,000. So that's on top of the 80. So that's where I'm getting my $104,000, $105,000 from. So.
Well, and again, that comes from, I think, a lack of understanding, an understandable lack of understanding of how the tax bracket.
Strange.
Who would have thought? And we did a video on this. I don't know that we did a podcast, but we did a video on this. How you can take $100,000, a retired person, married couple, take $100,000 of income, not counting Roth IRAs, take $100,000 of income and pay zero federal income tax.
If it's from a capital gain asset,
there are ways to do it.
It's the same idea, because basically that 12% ordinary income tax bracket I just talked about that ends at $80,000, give or take, we've got almost the same as a 0% long-term capital gain bracket plus the standard deduction. So we can have that 100,000-ish. And so the question I had with this morning was, I've got money in this stock portfolio that's more than doubled in the last couple of years. And I've got money in my IRAs. We're not taking our Social Security yet. Where should I be pulling money from right now to take advantage of these lower tax brackets? While we still have them until when they turn 60 or when they turn 70, their Social Security is going to kick in, and it'll be like $60,000+ a year between the two of them. They're the same age. And so what do I do? And it's a matter of, well, what's going to happen? The stock portfolio he had inherited, and he's probably never going to touch it. So he's going to just leave it for the kids. So there's no real reason, and he likes it, so he's not going to sell it. So let's take it out of the IRAs, because you want to keep the stocks anyway. You're going to keep them at hand to the kids. They'll get a step up in basis. Let's use the IRAs.
I understand this sounds complicated, but
it's fun.
It is fun, but let's simplify this. You said at the top of our podcast, people will tell you all the time, don't take money out of your IRA until you're mandated. At age 72 now, let's say. Leave it alone. Well, you just said, Professor Plum, I could, as a married couple, I could take 25, maybe 26, depending on my age, close to it, $1,000 out of my IRA, my traditional IRA, and pay no taxes on it. Why would I not do that?
Well, it all depends on what other things are happening in your life, what's going on. You got to have some money to live. Where's that money coming from? If you're living off of savings, then the first $24,000, $25,000 that comes out of the IRA is tax-free. And so you can do that. if you don't have the savings, then the first 24, 25,000 you're going to be taking out of the IRA tax free. You're going to be using it to live. But now we've got another 80,000 as a married couple that we can take out in the 12% bracket. Do we need all of that to live? The question then becomes, will I ever push myself into a higher bracket? And should I be accelerating and using this 12%, or it's going to be 12% for my life anyway? So what's the matter?
Let's pretend for just a moment to illustrate this, Professor Plum. Let's pretend that all I need, I'm a married couple, I'm 66 years old, I'm retired, okay? And let's say that I have a savings account, or maybe a Roth or something. So all that money, most of that is money I can live off of. But let's say I need $26,000 of income, all right?
Okay.
I could take it out of my Roth IRA, or I could take it out of my traditional IRA.
I'm taking it out of the traditional.
But doesn't that go against the whole common wisdom, which says you should never take it out of the traditional IRA? Because the reason you will take it out of your traditional IRA is because you're going to get that, in my example that I just used right now, you're going to get that money out tax-free.
Right, without any other income, because you're living off of...
Right, this is a hypothetical example. I'm making this up, all right? But you're getting it... Why would I take Roth money that would be tax-free anyway? If I have a $26,000 get out of tax jail free card, wouldn't I want to take the money out of the highest taxable account I could?
I'd rather leave the tax-free money, the Roth money, to somebody who would be in a tax bracket when they inherit it or use it.
Exactly.
And get the advantage of it. A surviving spouse. It'd be better to inherit a Roth IRA than traditional IRA. Kids and heirs down the line. The Roth IRA, they don't have to pay tax on. As long as it's not costing me, I'm good with that. But I'm going to take care of me first. And if I can get the money out of the traditional IRA and pay no tax, why would I waste the Roth IRA?
So when we look at planning for, let's just say, traditional IRA withdrawals, okay, because you do have to plan for this,
and you do have to plan for the ultimate required minimum distribution, even though it's been postponed for a year and a half to age 72 now. It's still there. We still have a required minimum distribution at 72, and we don't want to just create a ticking time bomb by going zero or very low on taxes now, and just wait until that bomb blows up in our face, and now we're paying a bunch of tax because the RMD's more than we needed, and it's affecting our Social Security, or it's pushing us over the IRMA, income-related monthly adjustment amount for Medicare, things that are creating more taxes than we would otherwise need.
And of course, you're talking about people who don't need the RMD. There are plenty of people who take more than the required minimum because that's what they need to live off of.
Oh, yes.
And that's perfectly fine, too, obviously, if you have
But we're talking about people that have personal money and IRA money, and they can get the distribution from either source. And a lot of people will spend down their personal money, leaving the IRA to grow, and give up that lower bracket, whether it's a zero bracket, the 12% bracket, a lower bracket than they're going to be in the future.
So the common wisdom that says, take your Roth money first, maybe spend
I haven't seen that often. I usually see that last, but take your personal money.
Take your personal money first, and then hold off on spending don't take any money out of your IRA until you absolutely have to at required minimum distribution time, even if you need it to live off of. I mean, don't take it out if you can help it. Take Social Security if you have to. That could be really
dumb,
expensive advice.
Say use the tax brackets that have been foisted on us as efficiently as you can for you.
And for people who don't understand how tax brackets work, we'll just repeat this. A married couple, and you can cut this in half for single, but a married couple has upwards of under current law, $25,000
just under 25
of income that they could take we'll call
without
it
paying taxes,
a 0% tax bracket.
And that doesn't require you itemize. If you have itemized deductions, it could be a little bit more than that. But yeah, and we have a progressive system. So the first block of income you have will be offset by the standard deduction. The next block of income that you have up to X amount of dollars is going to be taxed at there's a small amount at 10%, then another block at 12%, and each block. Now, when we go into the next block higher, it doesn't mean that it goes back and recalculates the tax on the previous blocks. Those are done. It doesn't. Right. It's not regressive in the fact that if I go into the 22% bracket, now all the income that came before that was 22 as well. Only the money that's in that next block is at 22. 32 or 24, then 32 and up the line.
You know how many people believe the opposite, though?
Oh, I understand that, especially people that get bonuses and say, I don't want the bonus because it's going to cost me more in taxes than the bonus is worth.
Yeah, they say, okay, well, I just looked and I'm in the, let's say, the 32% tax bracket.
Well,
I
God
make
bless
good
you.
money. I'm in the 30. Do you realize that means, and I live in a tax-free state, so let's leave that out.
Yeah.
We'll say, do you realize that means that for every dollar I take out, I lose 32 cents? And
For every new dollar that you take out, that is a true statement.
But it
doesn't affect the first couple hundred that you took out.
So I'm 32% bracket. I made $100,000. That meant $32,000 went to taxes. No.
Not of if the 100,000, you can't look at your total income.
No.
And say, I'm in the 32% bracket. That means I'm paying 32 cents on every single dollar.
A chunk was in the 0% because of the standard deduction.
10%,
a chunk was
12%, 22%.
So your overall tax bill is going to be, depending on how much actual income you have, going to be something lower than that actual tax bracket.
Yes, because it's all in blocks.
Yeah.
And it doesn't recalculate the previous block.
And that's what we talk about when we talk about using the tax brackets. Professor Plum, just to wrap this up here before we go, people talk about tax, lowering my taxes, tax minimization. It's really more about tax management.
Oh, very much so.
Than anything else.
Yeah, you can reduce your taxes today, but is that the best thing to do? I've seen people who are in a very, very low income tax bracket still doing deductible 401k contributions when they have Roth capability, and their IRAs and their 401ks are $1 million. And so when they retire, they're going to be in a higher bracket than when they're working right now because of deductions and everything else that's going on. Or it can go the other way. We have to take a look at where you are in your specific situation, what your taxes are like today. Is there any room to be efficient with the taxes today? And sometimes it means accelerating income or not taking the deduction to give yourself tax-free, tax advantage later.
And that's what we mean by using the tax brackets to your advantage. And it doesn't always work. I mean, I don't mean...
Some people are you're very blessed. You're going to have a tax situation for the rest of your life, and there's no way around it because you've got $5 million in an IRA, and you're 67 years old, and you've also got a pension for $8,000 a month.
You have more money than you know what to do with. You're going to have a tax.
And there's nothing they can do about that situation.
But in many cases, there are things that people can do. You can manage your taxes. So.
Not everybody's in that situation.
No, they're not. No, they're not. Some people are in a situation where management is going to give them some help, but certainly not in every case. Now, if you need help, by the way, with tax management, this is exactly what we're here for. I should give Professor Plum's, certifications here. You are a certified financial planner professional, but you also know a whole lot. That means you know a whole lot about taxes. You know also the whole Social Security thing. I think next week we should talk about Social Security.
Yeah, we haven't done that lately.
We haven't done that. I want to talk maybe next time about Social Security, people making decisions as to when they should take their Social Security.
I had a call just the other day asking me, can we still take it at 62 or as late as 70, or did they raise that to 72?
Well, it's questions.
Just a spoiler alert. No, they did not change anything in the Social Security this last go around.
But we'll mention it on the next podcast. That'll be the topic of our next podcast. I thank everybody for tuning in. If you want to get in touch with Professor Plum to talk about tax management, it's very important. Very important. Maybe get a little behavior coaching like we talked about in the last podcast. Give them a call, 800-644-1150. 800-644-1150. That's Professor Plum or any of the Lucia Capital Group advisors. They'll be happy to help you out. That's it. That's our podcast for Professor Rick Plum. I'm Johnny Dean. This has been Managing Your Financial Future. It's what we do on this program, on and off the air. And we'll talk to you again next time. The information provided should not be considered specific tax, legal, or investment advice and is specific to any individual's personal circumstances. This material cannot be used by a taxpayer for the purpose of avoiding penalties that may be imposed by law. This material was gathered from sources believed to be reliable. Its accuracy cannot be guaranteed. Always seek counsel of the appropriate advisor prior to making any investment decision. All investments are subject to risk, including the loss of principal. This information may change at any time without notice. Different types of investments and or investment strategies involve varying levels of risk, and there can be no assurance that any specific investment or investment strategy, including the investments purchased and or investment strategies advised by Lucia Capital Group, will be either suitable or profitable for a client's or prospective client's portfolio. Thus, investments may result in a loss of principal. Accordingly, no client or prospective client should assume that the presentation or any component thereof serves as the receipt of or a substitute for personalized advice from Lucia Capital Group or from any other investment professional. Roth IRA earnings will be taxed at ordinary income rates, and a 10% penalty tax will apply if withdrawn prior to age 59.5 or within 5 years of the date the Roth IRA was established, whichever is longer. IRA withdrawals will be taxed at ordinary income rates. Withdrawals prior to age 59.5 may also be subject to a 10% penalty tax. Lucia Capital Group is not affiliated with or endorsed by SSA. Social Security rules can be complex. For more information on Social Security benefits, visit www.ssa.gov or call 800-772-1213. Examples cited are hypothetical, are for illustrative purposes only, are not guaranteed, and subject to potential federal and state law amendments. There is no guarantee that you will achieve the results discussed or illustrated. CDs are FDIC insured up to $250,000 per depositor per insured bank for each account ownership category. The investment professionals are registered representatives with and securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, and member FINRA SIPC. Lucia Securities, LLC was acquired by LPL Financial August 2020. The investment professionals of Lucia Securities, LLC are now affiliated with LPL Financial and are conducting business using the name Lucia Capital.